Donald Trump is once again navigating familiar territory. A federal judge has raised legal concerns about one of his administration's actions, and Trump has responded in the only way he knows how, questioning the judge rather than the law. This time, the dispute centers on immigration and the Trump administration's attempt to use the Alien Enemies Act, a wartime statute dating back to the 18th century, to deport certain Venezuelan nationals suspected of gang ties. In response, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued a temporary order pausing some deportations, not as a final ruling, but to allow the court time to evaluate whether the law was being applied legally. That pause, however, was apparently too much patience for the former president, when respect for the rule of law comes with conditions. The White House quickly pushed back. In a public statement, administration officials argued that a single district judge does not have the authority to dictate the president's national security and immigration decisions. They framed the court's order as judicial overreach and signaled their intent to challenge it at higher levels. The message was unmistakable. The rule of law matters until it slows things down. Trump himself echoed that theme, publicly criticizing the judge's decision and suggesting that the court was interfering with the executive branch's responsibility to protect the country. He described the ruling as beyond the court's authority, reinforcing the idea that judges are welcome partners in governance so long as they agree with him. This pattern is not new. Trump has long portrayed unfavorable legal scrutiny as political interference, often treating courts less as independent institutions and more as obstacles to be overcome through public pressure. A wartime law and peacetime politics. The Alien Enemies Act was designed for extraordinary circumstances. Actual wars involving hostile foreign powers. Judge Boasberg's role was not to declare the administration wrong, but to ask a straightforward legal question. Does this law apply here in this context with these procedures? That question alone triggered outrage. Rather than engaging directly with the legal concerns, Trump and his allies framed the issue as a struggle between decisive leadership and timid bureaucracy. In this narrative, a temporary judicial pause becomes evidence of weakness, and legal caution is recast as recklessness. Ironically, the judge's order did not permanently block deportations. It did not absolve anyone of wrongdoing. It merely slowed the process long enough to ensure constitutional standards were being followed. In Trump's worldview, that delay was intolerable. Courts as referees or opponents, Trump's reaction highlights a deeper tension that has defined much of his political career, an apparent discomfort with institutional checks on executive power. When courts side with Trump, they are praised as defenders of justice. When they question him, they become symbols of corruption, bias, or incompetence. This selective respect for judicial authority is not subtle. It is central to Trump's political brand. The White House, backing this posture, has insisted that immigration enforcement falls squarely within presidential authority and that judicial scrutiny risks undermining national security. That argument may resonate politically, but legally, it is precisely why courts exist, to test where power begins and where it must stop. The bigger picture. What makes this episode notable is not that a judge paused a policy. That happens routinely in American law. What stands out is how quickly a procedural legal review was transformed into a political confrontation. No court found Trump in violation of the law. No judge sanctioned him. No dramatic penalties were imposed. Yet the rhetoric surrounding the case suggested a constitutional crisis rather than a standard legal process. In the end, this dispute says less about immigration law than it does about Trump's enduring philosophy. Rules are essential, especially when they support him. When they don't, the problem is never the policy, it's the referee. And so the cycle continues. Another judge, another legal pause, another reminder that in Trump's America, respect for the courts is strongest when the courts know their place, which ideally is somewhere out of the way.